Welcome po sa bagong episode sa Ang Dakilang podcast dito sa amin, where we'll be discussing different issues from different perspectives and contexts from different regions in the Philippines. Sa ngayong araw, we will be talking about waste to energy, which is specifically talking about how waste is turned into a renewable energy source and how it affects our environment dito sa Cebu City. So for today, our special guest would be Miss Nina Marie Estenzo from blue.org, who has been spearheading the campaign for waste to energy. So, hi Miss Nina.
Hi Annie, and congratulations on this whole setup you guys have.
Yes.
Wonderful work you're doing.
Miss Nina. So, one thing that gusto lang namin i-talk dito is what does waste to energy look like in the context sa Philippines?
Okay. So there's an emerging industry that they're pushing for, which is waste to energy. The proponents push it as basically an admission to the failure of government's mandate in implementing the National Solid Waste Management Act, which is RA 9003. However, we should approach this with much caution because it is proven to be very harmful and toxic to the environment. We have been able to fend off projects, WTA projects in Cebu, and the bigger coalition do that elsewhere because they primarily push the waste energy technology, which is incineration, which is clearly against our environmental law, the Clean Air Act. So now they're pushing for pyrolysis to kind of, it's like a workaround from incineration, but I think it's pretty much the same thing.
So they make the garbage like become that energy, that source.
Yeah, so they say that, again, falsely so, they claim it to be a renewable energy. Now, there's a lot of, you guys already know greenwashing, no? We just call it natural and renewable, and it, you know, to people, it's already, wow, this must be a good thing. But actually, waste is not a renewable source of energy.
Knowing that it has toxins and chemicals.
Yes,
and
production. Yeah, and it's also, waste is not a renewable energy source because waste is a byproduct of human consumption, and it should be reduced and minimized as mandated in our laws. But if that's where we get the renewable source of energy from, or we call it renewable, I think it fails to meet the requirement of what renewable is. Renewable is water or wind or solar that gets naturally replenished. That is not garbage. We can't be calling garbage as a byproduct of human consumption as renewable. We are in fact supposed to reduce that. So
mas naging lala yung environmental hazards natin, especially for our air, knowing that heavily polluted.
Yes, because particularly we talk about, say, the Clean Air Act. It's in place to protect us, not the communities, and it protects us particularly against dioxins, which, number one, our country still do not have the basic monitoring systems for dioxins in place. It is very highly, well, it's expensive for one, and I don't think we have that present in our country. As for the laws, it specifies, there's a bill being pushed that specifies for biomonitoring of dioxins, but only for like 8 hours in a year or something like that. But there are transient dioxin overloads that happen throughout the year, and biomonitoring have to be consistent. Yeah. So when we cannot properly monitor toxicity, then we are going against the precautionary principle in international laws, particularly for the environment, where there's a particular lawyer, so ironic, in the public hearing for the WTE incineration in Barangay Guba. And he was there talking about suway lang ninyo, you know, which is what our communities would mostly hear from proponents is Try it lang. It's never been done before. Try it. Sway. But you cannot tell people with the possibility of adverse impacts to health and lives and livelihood, sway lang, because you go against the precautionary principle that we are to take primary precaution before we dare push anything. So, yeah.
Sway lang is not very educational, especially when you're talking to people who are not totally aware of what that is really going to affect on the environment.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, there was also one public hearing where the Department of Agriculture, I think Chief for High Value Crops was there endorsing incineration technology without clear knowledge on the fact that, a dioxin on the soil and leaves of the farming community ingested by fish, chicken, go through a bioprocess, which then become highly toxic to human beings that consume products of agriculture. So you cannot possibly have agriculture or organic products within a kilometer radius, a couple of up to 5 or 10 kilometer radius of an incinerator. But yet, I saw the Department of Agriculture there endorsing it. I don't understand. Eventually, the Philippine Earth Justice Center sent them, I think, letter interrogatories, and rightfully so. But no agency of government should be used to push for incinerator technologies, especially because it's against the law and against their mandate. So, there.
Yeah, it's pretty much harmful. So, for the next question, so there are saying that there's more projects that na-propose dito sa ating bansa. So, what are the kind of projects here in Cebu, and how does WTE harm the environment here sa local region in Cebu?
Okay, so in Cebu, there was a failed attempt at building an incinerator facility in our beautiful upland barangay, beautiful, lush, verdant farming community of Barangay Guba in Cebu City. The proponents eventually withdrew because the community came together, got educated on the dangers of an incinerator facility within their area, and they successfully pushed back. And so the proponents of that incinerator facility withdrew, which is a good thing. But I hear that there are 2 facilities now being proposed or pushed, allegedly, one to cater to Cebu City and the South Province, and allegedly another one to cater to the North municipalities and province. So far that's what I hear. I've not seen any actual work toward the 2 proposed sites, but that's just what we're told.
Proposal.
Yeah, and the danger of that is, again, we go back to the same thing. The laws are in place to protect people and planet, right? The Clean Air Act is there because we are in a climate emergency, and noxious gases that are emitted aggravate the climate crisis. But aside from that, dioxins and furans spewed into the air without biomonitoring technologies in place really put the community at grave risk. You keep talking about other countries like Japan, they have it. But then if you look at it also, the leading cause of deaths in Japan is cancer. I'm not saying that's directly linked to that, but I had read that the leading cause of deaths in Japan is cancer, right? And Japan's waste is very different from the waste character we have. We have mixed waste. Majority of our waste, more than 50% of our waste produced is organic waste. You cannot use that as feedstock to your waste to energy facilities because you're supposed to just be burning plastics, clean plastics, as what Japan is doing. Now, we don't have clean plastics, first of all, and burning plastics is basically fossil fuel in physical form. Imagine burning that. And the WTE facilities are worse than coal power plants as far as GHG emissions are concerned. Coal power plants, if you're modern enough, you have about 50% efficiency. For WTE facilities, it's way below that, 25%, 35%. The rest is emitted. And we do not have the biomonitoring systems in place until then, until we're able to fix policy and be able to enforce 24/7, 365 days in a year monitoring. Maybe we can come back to the drawing board and examine non-burn technologies. But for now, the law holds true. You cannot incinerate, and we have to protect the communities against dioxins and furans.
It's kind of hypocritical, no, nga. Yung mga waste natin, it's going, like, the projects for waste is going against the mandate stipulated in our law.
Yes.
And that the fact that it's not harming just the environment, it's harming the people. And Japan and the Philippines, they have very different technologies yung pang ano nila sa waste.
Yeah.
Because Japan has been practicing different practices from the Philippines, and knowing how far we are there, a very developed country, and we're a developing country, so it's totally different.
Absolutely. Technologies are different. We could probably also just be receiving technology waste from these very developed countries. Who knows, right? And also that the discipline, culturally, we're different. You know, I mean, right now, Filipino, we really need to work on our discipline as a people. And Japan's segregation is very set. You go there, you see it. Right? You come to the Philippines, you don't need to look far and hard to know that we are not segregating. We do not apply discipline to our practices as far as solid waste management is concerned.
It's really hard kasi yung Philippines, different yung context nila when it comes to waste, different yung
Yeah,
sa Japan.
and also that science has, or research has shown that you have countries like Lithuania or the Czech Republic, or you have Paris even. There was an incident at the south edge of Paris where for a while there, I think it was in the 80s, they were prevented from consuming eggs because it was found to be with extremely toxic and dangerous levels of dioxins, thanks to the WTE facility they have there. In the Czech Republic and in Lithuania, also the same, about not less than 80. It goes from 89 to 83% of the eggs found within a 3 to 5 kilometer radius were found to be with extremely dangerous levels of dioxins. And so I don't understand why they keep comparing us to these countries when there have been incidences where that points us in the direction of it can get really dangerous.
Yeah, and we don't have like the financial money for, like, you know, to help us with our health. We're really living in a very corrupted system, even locally.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, and that if we push for waste to energy facilities here in Cebu, it's really going also against the will of the people, because there's so many problems locally, and then it just adds up.
Yeah. That breaks my heart, Yanni, because it's true. We can barely address common healthcare issues of our people.
Yeah.
Some of them die because they're waiting in the emergency room and they can't be attended. We have shortage of doctors, we have shortage of technology and medicine, and basic healthcare access to our people. That's reality now. You add aggravating factors such as what could possibly cause cancer. And I cannot imagine what it would be like for our people.
And I hope the proposals for both north and south of Cebu just don't push through, because there are already a lot of problems that need to be addressed.
Or the plans. I don't know if there are proposals, but I'm just told through the grapevine that there are plans of such. There are teams who are proposing, hoping that this be the answer to the problem, which is really, we do have a problem in solid waste management, right? But that's basically why the law is in place. RA 9003 is because we need to segregate and gun for zero waste. These proposals for our LGUs have a clause that say put up or pay out. So either we have to come up with a minimum target tonnage of garbage as feedstock to the incinerator or to the WTE facility, or we have to pay. Can you imagine? We have to pay the operator. So that's a lock-in for our LGUs, and we end up, taxpayers' money end up having to pay. And eventually, we will not have enough garbage to supply those incinerator facilities or WTE facilities. We will end up, we are looking at the grim possibility of Cebu having to import garbage from other areas. That's just, that's unacceptable to me. So, but that's exactly where we're going to be going.
There's still a lot of problems with landfills like Binalio.
That's become a dump site, really.
Yeah, and then Alaguinsan, and then a lot of garbage collection problems in each barangay. And importing new garbage will just worsen the situation.
Yeah, because eventually if you build a facility, the technology will require feedstock at how many hundreds of tons per day. We will not, Cebu alone will not be able to produce that eventually. So if we don't produce the feedstock, we end up having, because there are lock-in clauses. So we'll end up having to pay the operator. So to circumvent that, we'll have to, I suppose, we'll have to end up importing garbage from other cities or other islands. And I can't imagine that possibility for Cebu. I don't want that. So aside from the clear health impacts that are there, now there's also another thing we need to consider. There are people who will be displaced with every waste-to-energy facility. We call them our resource pickers right now. Every barangay has that. So we call muna yung mga mambabasura, moadto sila. They go to our waste and they segregate where we fail to segregate. A lot of the casualties in Binale were our waste resource pickers. So they get displaced with every facility. Right now, there are good waste resource programs that actually turn garbage into livelihood. We have that in Ayawan, we have that in various places. They probably are not given the platform to talk about what they're doing, but they're effectively doing it. So they're turning garbage by recycling it into actual livelihood. There's a barangay in Barangay Barrio Luz through the leadership of Ma'am Nida Cabrera, and she was able to create an 8 million peso industry out of recycling garbage. They started with 5,000 pesos, turned it into an 8 million industry. They won Galing Pook for that one. So it is possible to turn waste into something that can be economically viable for our people, not just for the few preferred developers of our politicians, which end up harming the community. So,
yeah, some business dealings of politicians just straight up hurt others, and then that's just something that we can't stand.
We really have to guard against corruption also, because it makes you wonder if science says that or even the law says that it's against, and for scientific reasons presented, there's research behind it, and yet you keep pushing. It makes you wonder, like, why, right?
Income generating
for the very few. So I would have to say I do relate that. I do examine the possibility of corruption when you keep proposing something that's a false solution.
Yeah, because it doesn't really help anything. It just accumulates more problems.
I would think so at this level. If we want, maybe we can create the proper framework, proper biomonitoring systems, look into policy, really fortify that, and then we can come together and dialogue about what's the best option to go forward. But right now, we really have that in place in RA 9003. Simply implement the law. Segregate, recycle, reuse, gun for zero waste. By the way, when you say zero waste, you're not aiming for the impossible when you say, we're never going to produce waste. That's not what zero waste means.
It's impossible.
Yes, zero waste means that you're able to reuse and recycle and keep at an optimum level what would originally be waste for the longer period of time. So there are so many zero waste principles, like when you do rainwater catchment or gray water catchment, and you use that to flush your toilet. So I mean, there's so many ways to skin a cat, and there are zero waste principles in place, and that's what we should gun for. Zero waste instead of waste generation, which is what's going to happen in a WTE community.
Okay. So for our next discussion, we'll talk about the legal side of waste to energy. So first, let's ask that what are the ano ba nga ang mga environmental laws na nagpo-protect sa ating environment at sa ating communities, and ano ang role ng policies na ito when it comes to waste to energy campaigns?
Yeah. So, number one, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to speak about what we know of it from a campaign sense and standpoint. This is what we try to, when we talk about bringing the law closer to the people, we make them understand that number one, it is our basic right to enjoy a healthful, vibrant, healthy environment.
Yeah.
That is your right, and as much as it's my right, as it's my daughter's right, as it is everybody's basic right. And government is mandated to deliver on that promise by our Constitution. Second, when it comes to the WTE facility for incineration, it is definitely against Section 20 of the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act protects against toxic gases like dioxins. Dioxins are about 200 compounds of dioxins. 17, I think, more or less, are very, very highly toxic. Furans are also toxic. So they protect the community from that. That's why we do not allow incineration. It's banned in the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act, along with the National Solid Waste Management Act, which is RA 9003, which gives the government the mandate to properly segregate and manage solid waste. Both are promises that the Philippines committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions within this decade and beyond, because that is a promise we made to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Yeah,
And so when you set up a facility that emits greenhouse gases that further aggravates global warming, you are going against your commitment to people and planet in coming up with the right solutions for the climate crisis.
Yeah, knowing every country has its responsibility. That's why we have coming of parties. That's why we have a lot of conventions.
Yes, this is exactly from the Paris Convention, especially after what happened to Payatas. And then now you see it happening in Binalio, and then now in Navotas, because really it's a failure to implement RA 9003.
Binale was not somewhat of a tragic accident. It was full of the problems that literally came from not able to act the laws properly, not being able to systematize.
Exactly. That was exactly systemic failure and failure to implement the law.
Because when I've done a study, like my thesis for solid waste management for Barangay Guadalupe, when we found out that the waste, since there's no binalyo na, di butang dito sa Aluguinsan, and then mag-wait pa sa collection dito sa SRP, and knowing that these are very highly developed areas and Aluguinsan is up south, and then knowing that there's a lot of garbage still piling up, and it's coming from each barangay in Cebu City.
Yes.
And knowing that then we are going to have like this kind of waste to energy campaign, and then we're going to have plants that incinerate this kind of garbage. It just worsens a lot. And then we just came back from like, an air problem, like air pollution
The haze.
problem, hazing here, and then knowing we already went through a haze that there's no WTE, how much more there's WTE?
Yeah. And you cannot incinerate all our wastes, because organic waste you cannot. So it's got to be clean plastic waste that is a feedstock for the incinerator. So minority of what we produce is going to be for the feedstock. And yeah, I think aside from the fact that you mentioned the haze, but we are also very disaster prone, sad to say. For example, 2025 alone, we had earthquake, which still have aftershocks. We realized we have a fault line after all in the north. And then we have typhoons, right? So how many disasters struck Cebu? Can you imagine if we set up an incinerator facility or WTE facility, one hairline crack in that facility can cause emissions to go out unmonitored. So And that's such crazy danger for the community where you set up the facility. So it's especially not in a disaster-prone area such as Cebu.
And it's hard to get a legal battle knowing that it's not publicly owned, these facilities, and it's between the people versus like these corporations or these private investors that are doing WTE. It's
Yeah.
going to be a hard side for the law, and knowing that the law is not properly implemented.
Oh, you know what? This is where I'll tell you though,
Yeah.
that I've seen it firsthand, that the law is really a recourse we have. When we were doing campaigns for Philippine Earth Justice Center, I have seen myself, developmental aggression stopped in its tracks because the law was implemented and came out to play. So we do have recourse in the law. We have to be clear on that one. We just really have to seek it and push for its full implementation. But we are protected by the law. The law is for people and it is for planet. It definitely is. We just have to really push for its full implementation. And I am really still hopeful in what the law and the protection the law can provide for our environment and for us.
So as mentioned, yung other anti-WTE campaign which was held last April 30, there was this discussion on the strategic lawsuit against public participation that is usually encountered by environmental defenders and activists. So how can we correlate this issue on the WTE campaigns that's currently happening?
Yeah. So far, I'm glad that there's been no intimidation as far as WT is concerned naman. Except for rude behavior of that politician in the public hearing that I saw. But there's been no threat or intimidation, threat to life for any of our advocates. And I see it because this, like for example, in Barangay Gubay, it's a community. It's a community movement, and there's strength in numbers. So far, there's not been any intimidation suits at play. But if there should be, there are groups like the Philippine Earth Justice Center who will cover the environmental advocate for free. So you just need to let them know. If there's a lawsuit, a nuisance suit filed against the environmental advocate, then the strategic lawsuit against public participation comes into play, and there are lawyers and the likes of the Philippine Earth Justice Center and other groups that will defend for free the environmental advocate, because SLAP protects the advocate from criminal, administrative, and civil liabilities that are intended to silence the advocate. So that we do enjoy that protection in the law, and so you become a veritable untouchable, and you should not be afraid to demand for your basic right to a healthful environment.
Yeah, and it's also stipulated in the Bill of Rights in the Constitution that you have the right to always speak up.
Yes, you should, especially the youth.
Yeah, because we won't be inheriting a dead planet or a dead environment that's very much polluted or harmed.
Yeah.
So it's better na, as of now, as young as we are, as healthy as we are, speak up.
Fearlessly.
Yeah.
Fearlessly. And there's already there's been a Supreme Court ruling of Oposa and Factoran where these were kids from another area who filed a suit for the protection of their environment. And the argument initially was, why are you doing that? You're not from this specific area. They were in another place. And they said, no, a healthy environment is owed us. All Filipino children are owed a healthy environment. Any Filipino youth can file suit against those who destroy your environment. So there's so many. And there's also PENCAS now. We are mandated to do like a national accounting requirement for our environmental resources. So the rate of its depletion can be monitored for every development. So it's going to be side by side every development to make sure that the development will not deplete the resources that's intended for you guys.
Yeah, so With that, what are other renewable and sustainable solutions that are best suited contrast to WTE?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, they say like you keep advocating as WT and you don't have solutions yourself. In fact, we do. We have we have partner communities. We've been working with them in simply implement the full implementation of RA 9003. So there are also fantastic, brilliant SKs, Sangguniang Kabataan Chairman, who have waste segregation, waste exchange programs. So in order to incentivize the community to segregate, to instill discipline, because right now we have to work on social behavioral change. So to be able to incentivize that change, they ask, their brilliant ideas are to do waste exchange programs. So they ask the community to bring plastics over, or they go to the communities themselves and they exchange, depending on the kilo, either cup noodles or how many kilos of rice. So the exchange depends on how much plastic you're able to bring to the center. If it's during school, at the start of the school year, they will exchange it with school supplies. So step one, segregation, RA 9003 is already being addressed in that one. Then they start employing, in the lack of materials recovery facilities, we can go to our resource pickers, the ones that get displaced with the WT facility, and they become the materials recovery system. So they segregate, they sort through that, they check which ones are still viable for them to transform into product that they can sell, and there's additional livelihood to the communities. There are also programs that target women. I believe the Cebu City, this was proposed, I think, by Ma'am Emma Ramas of the Cebu City Solid Waste Management Board, where they subsidize composting bins for our women, and they buy back compost or crops from the compost that's been developed. There are also private businesses that partner with communities to buy back the products from urban gardening created from the community composts that have begun in a lot of our barangays. So we're starting. The target is waste diversion. And then eventually we go into waste reduction. And then hopefully the National Solid Waste Management Board will act on banning or listing single-use plastics as a non-environmentally viable product. And so eventually we will get rid of the source of single-use plastics and go into bioplastics maybe.
Yeah, single-use plastics. I think that's something that literally is being practiced right now. I think in our school, sa USJR, we had to create through our Committee on Social Responsibility in the SSC to ban the single use of plastics and find new alternatives.
Thank you for doing that.
Because our school has always advocated for like circulating these kinds of waste instead of throwing them away.
That's a circular economy right there.
Circular economy. And then we haven't yet been introduced to this waste to energy. We've been mostly introduced to circular economy because we just think that disposing them directly is literally harming the environment.
Yes.
And we've been like saying that we need to uphold a lot of environmental policies, environmental acts, and CWTS namin, NSTP. We've been lecturing that every Saturday.
That's nice.
First year.
To the community. First years
in your
school. That's nice.
But we do have a commission on environment who does that, and then we do have an environmental center, which is Rhythm, who actually encourages us to circulate and most likely reuse majority of our waste.
That's nice.
Our COSR right now is like starting to get rid of these kinds of plastic use so that we won't have more waste to produce. Since I myself, as an officer, I've seen that there's a lot of waste garnered in the canteens and in the organization. So mostly these are single-use things, single-use plastics. So yeah, it can actually accumulate.
That's nice, Yani. Thank you very much for doing that. We also have SASAFI, which is the biggest, I think, sports federation for colleges and universities. And they drew a policy to ban single-use plastics in all its games and venues. We have, I think, also schools who have banned single-use plastics, and that could also be a project that eventually what you're doing now for your school is preparing them to eventually ban SUPs for the environments that we can control.
Yeah, because we think that when we have more waste, I think it would have been more harmful. It would have caused a lot of contribution.
You're adding to the problem.
Yes,
Yes.
adding to the problem. And then if we do have a lot, if simba ko lang na ay waste to energy nga kanang facility, ang among mga hugaw maadto ra po dito, and in the end of the day it's still going to circulate more problems, and
it will come back to
come
us.
back sa amoa. And that knowing that we've had a lot of experiences with calamities induced kanang hugaw sa mga flooding, especially downtown area ang school na hugaw.
Yes.
And that itself, it's gonna cause more and more problems, and it's gonna be worse for the situation. Especially we students, we don't like to have online classes or synchronous classes, so it's gonna be a challenge.
Yeah, especially with UJR. But you know, we have to note that WTE is not the solution to the flooding. The flooding issue is because we have failed in managing our waste. We are overproducing. There's an overconsumption of single-use plastics, and our drainage systems are really outdated. So WT has nothing to do with the solutions to that one. It's fix those that I've mentioned first, and then maybe flooding for us will get better.
But it's most likely going to go through the air and stuff like
it always goes back. So our actions always have consequences. So for example, we consume a lot of single-use plastics and we just recklessly throw it thinking, oh, that's not, whatever, that's just single-use plastic I don't need anymore. With regard to single-use plastics, right, it always comes back to us, because we think that, we eat a piece of candy, we throw it on the streets and think, oh, we're done with, we're rid of that. But there's a study conducted by, I think, USC with Drs. Tina Paler and Dr. Ian Tabanyag that there's about, I think, 16 tons of plastic waste that is flushed out to the Mactan Channel every day for Cebu City alone. And I think about more or less 750 tons of plastic waste that are stuck in our mangroves all over the island. So imagine that, right? And that amount of plastic waste goes out to the sea. They become microplastics because it's non-biodegradable. They become microplastics. We don't see it, but it's there. It's ingested by sea life, marine life, fish, shrimp, crabs, and we eat the fish. Microplastics they ingest from our waste goes back to us. Newborn babies already register microplastics in their system. We all have microplastics in our system. 90% of salt brands all over the world have microplastics. And what is the effect of something inorganic in an organic body such as ours? Increased disease, right? Respiratory, it affects all our organs. Respiratory, even the skin, even mental health. So now they connect microplastics not only to just respiratory or kidney disease, but also mental health, right? So it affects our neuro facilities. So there's no such thing as, oh, I'm rid with that plastic. I'm rid of that plastic. It always comes back to us. It will be the same with a WTE facility where now we're talking about dangerous levels of dioxins and furans.
Okay, so for the next segment, let's talk about the anti-waste to energy campaign. So about this campaign, since this campaign aims to raise awareness about possible impacts of WTE and promote more sustainable and community-based solution management. Since you're very passionate about anti-waste to energy campaign, would you mind sharing the journey of creating this campaign here in Cebu City?
So in doing campaigns, we discover certain templates that work, some don't. So for example, Baguio successfully fended off waste to energy because of Mayor Magalong. So this mayor who put people and planet first. So as soon as he heard the dangers of waste to energy in a waste to energy summit which he attended, he said, we are abandoning all waste to energy programs for Baguio. And so for now, Baguio is safe. He is the winning template for something like that. In Cebu, we have found a beautiful template for winning, which is the Barangay Guba community, where they successfully came together, farming a beautiful farming community who empowered themselves with the right information within the dangers of what a facility like that could be for them, and fought off the proponents and some politicians. And I saw there what the power of community can do. And I saw firsthand that all authority of government emanates from the people. When the people say no, government must follow. So for Cebu, that I find is a winning template is we must go to the people. We must just flush them with information, the right information. And I don't even want to be doing so much hard selling. It's really just give them the access to the right information and the right scientific data. And then they decide. It's part of empowering the electorate is you give them access to the right data and then you decide what's right for you. So that's basically the drive of our campaigns. If it's to spearhead something, that's a lot on one person's shoulder, and that's most certainly something I would never take on. But what I really believe ultimately in any campaign, and especially as far as a campaign for our country, is to elevate the electorate so that an elevated electorate will eventually make the right choices as far as our elections and politicians are concerned. And how do you elevate the electorate is to really give them the access to pertinent information that they will use to decide for themselves. And every time they decide for themselves and they exercise the right to decide for themselves based on right information, they begin to empower themselves. And so that is my hope for the community in Cebu.
Yeah. Because it's better to go grassroots in all this educational awareness, because we've had a lot of educational awareness seminars on the environment, on like, I remember there's a Pasil, the garbage, like we have a lot of awareness there, talking about there should be no garbage at sea, we should clean up our shores, like that. So with that case, it's better that the people are informed, informed with the right data, they're informed with the right educational material, because so that they could make the right choices. Because the law is not up for different interpretations. It's really objective, it's straightforward and direct.
And I think like for Pasil, it's not enough that we work in that area. If it's a river, it's got to be upriver. Because if you try to change behavior, and behavioral change campaigns are high investment, long term. You can't just change behavior like that. As in, you really have to handhold. So, but if you do a change campaign downstream and upstream is still the same, and they're still churning garbage like there's no tomorrow, that garbage will still flow down to the community downstream. So it's got to be systemic as well.
So for this, for WTE in this case, it's always about the communities, conditioning them. That's not being conditioning them to be just against, but to inform them why it's wrong.
Exactly.
Because not all projects are very beneficial for every single person. Not every project is for everyone. Some are investments, some are just money making, some are just personal projects to bolster,
ego sometimes, even
their popularity,
or pockets of the few,
just so they can say they have a project they made for the country, knowing that a lot of people mahilaptan man jud sila. That dili man jud ingon nga mga adults ra, even their children.
This is for the children. This fight is for the children.
Yeah, because they cannot inherit a dead planet.
They should not.
They should not be able to inherit a dying planet, a dying environment with really less resources, where the resources that our grandfathers or grandmothers are enjoying are becoming privileges now for them, and
Yeah.
it's not all right.
No, it's not.
It's not
No, it's not.
enjoying.
They deserve the
So-
best. And the problem with Filipinos sometimes, or some of our leaders, so ego-driven, they think
Yeah.
that they're the ones who will finally deliver the solution to our waste
Yeah.
problem in their term. But that's ambitious. And they can only hope to start behavioral change as far as the discipline
Yeah.
when it comes to even just basic segregation. You know, you can't do band-aid solutions to a problem that's accumulated for so many decades. You know, that's just really foolish and egotistical for any one politician to think that.
Yeah, and it's not okay that every project has to harm a community, has to harm an individual.
Shouldn't.
Because when you think of projects, it must be long-term, it must be sustainable, it must be for everybody. And every campaign regarding these projects, every voice that speaks out, it matters.
Yes.
Because it's for the people. If we live in a democratic world, of course, the people matter the most, because who placed them into that kind of power? Of
Yeah.
course, it's the people.
Yeah.
They think of the people, they have to think of the environment, the planet that they're living in.
Yeah. And for WT in particular, if you call yourself a people politician,
Yeah.
you have to think about who you're going to displace when you set up a facility.
Yeah.
And there are current, in every barangay, we have marginalized resource pickers that get displaced for every WTE facility. So if you're for people, aside from the impacts to health of the communities, you're not going to displace our resource pickers. You're going to make sure that they have, they continue with their income, they are given the proper equipment for safety to do their jobs, and you're going to support them, not marginalize them.
Yeah, if you kick them out of their communities, you're just
Or
wasting-
livelihood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their livelihood. You're making everything worse.
You're not for people.
Yeah. You're just only for the few people who are like privileged.
Preferred developers.
For your ego, for your money. You forget that these people, they have lives, they have
Yeah.
livelihoods. They contribute to the economy.
Yeah.
They contribute to the environment.
Yes.
They've done a lot. So
Yeah.
this
Especially at this time where we do not have the proper biomonitoring systems in place. We do not have the right facility and policy to ensure safety for all. We can't even figure out flood control for
Yeah.
crying out loud, right? I mean, it's been how long? So, what makes us think that we can play around with dioxins? You cannot.
You're playing around with chemicals that harm people. So
Harmful, toxic compounds
if you can't
against the law.
it's not, if you can't figure out the basic engineering of flood control, then you can't figure out the basic science and chemistry behind
Yes.
what you're doing.
We do not have the right safety nets in place right now.
Knowing that science here in the country, it's not really, specifically environmental science, it's not really upheld, it's not really empowered or funded by the government. Of course, it's gonna be a gamble for them.
There is, though, environmental research, but I think it just needs to, there's a gap from the scientists to the actual communities, and to make their work relevant, the communities have to understand what they're doing at their level. So it's important that those studies are brought to the people for the
Yeah.
people to understand.
Bridging that gap in order for every policy and every project to be people-centric,
Yes.
to be community-centric.
Yes, policy has to be science-based and understood by the community.
Yeah, both science and empathy has to go together, because it's
Ideally.
not impossible. It's not hard to create projects. It's both scientifically beneficial and community beneficial.
Yeah.
It has to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So for our next segment, we talk about the security measures of this campaign. So can you share the main purpose of this campaign and why is it important to talk about right now, especially talking about the security measures regarding the environment?
Security measures to the advocate or to the...
Environment, we should take for the environment and community.
Okay. Right now, for WT in particular, there definitely is not, we do not have the right biomonitoring systems in place. There's supposed to be an attached monitoring system to the technology. But that's not enough, because that's always going to be for the benefit of the operator. There should be monitoring systems, third-party monitoring systems, and the more the better, to monitor particulate matters, to monitor dioxins, emissions. So, which we don't have. Okay, so until that's in place, there's nothing secure about any waste-to-energy facility.
Because it doesn't have the proper technology for that.
To
And
monitor, yeah.
It's not okay for you to put exactly a technology-driven project, and then you cannot consistently maintain that technology, fund that technology, or even, finance everything to carry that out. And it's just gonna end up failing again and again.
The preferred developer might have the billions in their pockets to push for technology like that, but and good for them. But what we're really looking at is how to ensure safety of the environment and our people. So right now, we do not have the proper biomonitoring systems in place. The WT bill that's being pushed only require, I think, about 8 hours in a year to monitor dioxins. But there are transient episodes of where there's an overspill of dioxins, which cannot be just captured within that 8-hour window. So that's the policy that's being pushed right now, and it's extremely flawed. It's not protective of our people and our environment. So security systems, as far as I'm concerned, is really a fail. There's supposed to be an internal monitoring system within the facility, but that's for their own good as far as I'm concerned. We should have externals, which we don't have.
But with regards to externals, how does the scope of the
you should invest in biomonitoring technologies for dioxins, which is highly expensive. I doubt DNR has that. There should also be monitoring systems for particulate matters, because you're talking about emissions. I do not think DNR has that, although I think Greenpeace funded this monitoring system, which is why they closed down the pyrolysis machine in Dumaguete. But that was funded by an NGO, the monitoring system. So because they found that what they called pyrolysis in the waste-to-energy technology in Dumaguete spewed highly toxic levels of particulate matters. So pyrolysis na to, they claim it to be pyrolysis. So it was shut down because it was highly toxic to the environment and to people. And the monitoring system they used there was just for particulate matter, not for dioxins. And that was funded, I believe, by an NGO. And it was a private sector movement. DNR just came after they presented the results. So I don't think our government still has the capacity to properly monitor.
With all the corruption issues, with all the priorities not being centered on the environment, I don't think that we have that capacity to literally fund WTE monitoring.
Yes, they're pushing to repeal Section 20, that WTE bill that's being pushed in Congress now is pushing to repeal Section 20 of the Clean Air Act, to remove the ban on incineration. So that paves the way for incineration facilities to come in.
But how can you generate clean air when there's incineration?
Exactly. But also, this is why it's so important that we elect capable, qualified lawmakers. Because those lawmakers proposing that should, in fact, know that there is a principle of non-regression when it comes to environmental laws. When you've set the standards for environmental protection in a law, such as non-incineration in a Clean Air Act, you cannot regress that. You cannot repeal that, because that's exactly protective. So that's why it's important to choose the right congressmen who craft laws for people and not just interests of their developers.
I think that lawmakers are just as important as electing the president and the vice president, because they're the ones who can literally change the course of every development in
Yeah.
our country.
But yet, you have a bill in Congress looking to repeal the incineration ban within the Clean Air Act, when in fact there is a principle of non-regression as far as environmental protection is concerned. So I really don't know. I don't think that's going to progress.
And knowing that the Philippines has an international responsibility to a lot of environmental conventions and treaties.
And also the international courts of justice now mandate all governments to protect the environment, especially in a climate crisis. So you know what? Fearless forecast, I don't think that WTE bill is going to move.
Yeah, because knowing that the urgency of the climate crisis needs more sustainable solutions, needs to have more environmentally impactful solutions, I don't think...
And less greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I think that having too much emissions, if we want to eliminate greenhouse gases, then there's another type of emission. We're just creating the same type of problem.
Aggravating, yes.
Yeah, we're just aggravating the problem of the climate crisis.
Yes.
And that knowing that there's already a hectic deadline to reach all of the goals, like by 2030, the SDGs, and then by 2050, 2040, a lot of goals that needs to be reached within the decade.
Yeah.
And it's hard for you to push your self-interest and a lot of projects that doesn't benefit the environment or even benefits the people. There are a lot of problems that we're already facing. We have problems with landfills, we have problems with single-use plastics, we have problems with the flood controls that we haven't even seen, the problems at the garbage of seas, oil spills. There's a lot of problems, and then we can't add more.
Yes. So all hands have to be on deck for environmental protection in a climate emergency. And we cannot afford climate aggravating factors such as the emissions of a WTE incinerator facility.
Yeah, it's not, aside from the displacement, we also have to think about the funding of that project by simply building it, by simple structures, and its technology that we are going to put in, the garbage that we have to take in, and knowing that we don't have a lot of garbage, and knowing that the people here, we can count the population of the people, and then there are still household waste that we still have to count for.
Well, they will probably go into private sector partnerships to fund the facilities, but the fact remains that, developmental aggression is also backed up by billions and billions of dollars. They have money to roll out, but the fact remains, or the questions we should ask is, regardless of, like that facility in Guba was 4.9 billion. It was ready. But the people asked the right questions. Will it protect us? Will it harm us? What are the risks to our health and to our livelihood? They asked the right questions, and they were successfully able to stand up against a 4.9 billion project. So
it's always important to ask the proper questions, the objective of this kind of project, because it's not okay that we just accept these projects. May ani ra ang resulta. Dili di siya kuan.
Yes, that was really a people-led campaign. I just was there. I was able to witness true heroes of the communities, and it was amazing.
The power has always been with
the people. Yeah.
And it's important that the environment has to be for the people.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be for brand names or corporations.
Yes. Or one politician claiming to have the solution.
Yeah. We don't have the solution, but the solution has to come with a collective effort.
Collective, yes.
So I'm really happy, Ms. Means, that there's this anti-WTE campaign, which is still relatively new, but it's something that it's nice to introduce to universities so that they would be able to know that, since we've started our first semester campaign to end to ban single-use plastic.
Thank you.
So it was an initiative from our COSR, Committee on Social Responsibility. They were tapping us, si Honorable Coino na mga parang what if magkuanta policy craft about that. It was spearheaded sa started last Congress by Koan. If you know Erica.
Yes.
Herrera,
yes.
Sila to nag-start.
Yes.
And then ilang draft, ilang murag na na pasa na balik sa amo aba. So moto ban
Yeah.
single-use plastic.
Amazing. Good job.
Yeah, and it's still ongoing pa na siya, kasi to be implemented pa na siya.
Yeah.
And then karon, I think it's nice to introduce WTE to schools so
Yes.
that a lot of students may be educated on how waste to energy is not a renewable source.
Not.
Because if we have already done that with communities, let's also do that to a lot
Students.
of universities.
Yes.
So one thing dyan na realize na ko aning talk was like, hala, nice yun siya is put out to universities, because if we're able to have environmental awareness on recycling, reusing, and reducing, maybe it's time for us to talk about how waste is not that of a renewable source.
Waste is not
Yeah,
a renewable source. Yeah.
How toxins would affect us and our environment. It's really nice na mapupod namin.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to be able to meet more of you guys.
Yeah.
We also have community heroes, the ones who fought in Guba, who would be so happy to meet with you guys. It's so beautiful because you're doing something like this, and eventually there will be school campaigns. But
Yeah.
it's beautiful for the youth to meet the actual community heroes. They're farmers. You know, usually what's marginalized and what we're fighting for, we're fighting with, are the fisher folk because reclamation, etc.
Yeah.
No? But it's also such a fantastic, beautiful thing to work alongside farmers. And I would love for them to meet you.
Yeah. Nice mo siya nga na ay integration ang students.
Yes.
Because
yes.
makita mo gud nimo nga kanang hala, nindot siya nga kanang opportunity to meet that, oh, these people sila itong nakapastop at strong waste to energy.
Yeah.
So, if naa sila kaya ni nila, kaya sa din na mo.
Yes,
It's to spark something.
Absolutely. Oh my God, you guys are fantastic. So I'm in the middle and I get to see, the youth movement, right? And I know how brilliant and how capable you guys are. And then I'm on this side and I've seen also the local heroes in Guba, and I have the privilege of seeing both. And the both of you, it's crazy because you say, hala, kaya din ni namo. Well, I'm there and I'm like, you're absolutely amazing. What are you talking about? Of course. Yeah.
Paano mo ba nga kanang kami as regular students, usa ka mo mabuhat, no? So then,
that's so
ang paano na, paano mo nga, ay, kung kaya nila, makaya po din.
Absolutely.
Like, it's something, it sparks a story of inspiring to do change, to take power into your hands, because you own that land.
And you are powerful. Yeah, you are the future generation. As a matter of fact, we all should bow down to you guys, for one, because we are sorry for what we have made of the environment that you're going to inherit, because we really screwed this up big time, and I'm really sorry about that. But second is because it's in your hands now. You are basically the future of this country. What will happen to this country is in your hands, and you're so powerful in your own right.
Na kaya naman namo ning mga recyclable, na naman may mga projects po na spearheaded sa school. It's nice na po na to. This is time na po nga i-introduce na sad si WTE.
Yes.
Because it's something that if we can talk about garbage in the tip of the iceberg, the most common things that we see, we can also talk about the garbage when it's used for kunuhay the betterment of this country,
Yeah.
the betterment of the locality.
When
So
they
it's-
greenwash
the
that.
greenwashing. Because looking na address naman sa ginagmay ng mga greenwashing, we know sana ng mga kuan sa corporations.
Yeah, because you did LNG, right? There was the collective successfully fended off LNG. Yeah.
And then ang kuan lang need na lang jud ana is to talk about how renewable energy involving garbage
Yeah.
is that bad. So it needs to spark a conversation among the youth.
Yes.
Yeah, especially sa mga school, since we have kanang RIDM, which is Environmental Commission on Environment, and Committee on Social Responsibility, which is also shifting to environmental nga mga policies. So, it's nice to talk about anti-waste to energy campaign and to talk about waste to energy in its direct sense.
Yeah.
How is it so harmful?
That's amazing. And the policy that you're making, please do share with us also, so maybe we can bring it to the halls of Congress, right? So you are going to be side-by-side lawmakers, and not only for Congress, but maybe in your barangays or your local city or municipal councils. The law should be coming from the people.
Nice to actually have it.
Yes. So please share with me or...
I'll ask lang sad, since we've had our recent elections pa, kung kinsa new chairs sa COSR to share those old na draft.
Yeah.
Kay
But I had spoken to Erica and she's
Yeah.
also quite amazing.
daghan ba po?
Yeah.
Daghan mo na kuan. And karon murag nice na i-talk about si waste to energy.
Yeah. Plastics is really the issue, right? So we have a plastics-free Pilipinas movement where we gun for zero waste. How do we do that? We do recyclables. We encourage the communities to bring their refillable bottles. So Baguio has stores where they do refillables only, and that's such a darling thing to
Yeah.
start. We used to do that of course you weren't born yet, but when we were younger, we had refillables, and somehow the habit of convenience took over, and there was single-use plastics. There came single-use plastics, and the plastics lobby is strong. That's also that's a multi-billion industry.
Yeah.
So you have that money to keep pushing for it, right? But we'll get there. We'll eventually get there.
Thank you. So, right now, this wraps up the episode of our Dakilang podcast, which is talking about waste to energy and how it harms our environment, especially the locality and community. So, we have to thank our very wonderful speaker, Miss Nina, for sharing her insights and her journey for this episode, especially when it's talking about the environment. I'm really thankful for your wisdom, Miss Nina, and your knowledge on the environment, waste to energy campaigns, and literally how the community and people are really affected. It's really a very inspiring knowledge na makuha na ko, and I've gained a lot.
Oh, thank you, Yanni. The gift is to me. I keep saying, like, I just get to see what you guys are capable of, and all I need to do is show up, and you come up with all these kinds of beautiful things. Congratulations to the Dakila Cebu Collective for your podcast series from Bayan Bytes with Silamon, and talking about it online to now what it is. So congratulations, everybody.
Thank you, Miss Nina.
Makinig, makilahok, at makisangkot. Dito lang sa Ang Dakilang Podcast! Follow us on Spotify and don't forget to rate Ang Dakilang Podcast!